Western State Hospital, the fifth public asylum constructed in the United States, started out with the best of intentions.
Then things took a dark turn.
When the hospital was at its peak, you had up to 25,000 specialized procedures happening here. That included electroshock, lobotomies, and insulin comas.
We've come here to uncover the hidden histories that lie within these walls. Breaking into an abandoned asylum, it's like walking through a portal into the past. The three of us are on a mission to document the story behind the rise and fall of these places before they disappear forever.
My name is Louis Auguste, and I'm an urban explorer. So this would have been the kitchen back here. We're talking about at the peak, feeding about 1,700 people a day, 3 times a day. What I'm interested in is the wow factor. When I turn the corner and I see something that's still preserved. Looks like some penicillin tablets. Patients were known to dump their things in the wall. It just gives me like this stop and pause, and I just look at it and it's like, wow. Come on, we can go upstairs.
Sure, let's do it.
My name is Caroline Walker.
Wow. You can see the hole where it breaks out into fresh air.
I'm a journalist and a blogger. My obsession is tracking down and preserving the personal histories of the people who lived and worked in this space.
The superintendent, Joseph Desjardins, was a real American villain.
Okay, look.
So many structures are being torn down. There's this urgency to capture it now and to experience it now.
So patients would sometimes write notes or tear pages from books and magazines and drop them down those crates.
A lot of this has to do with identity as an American and trying to find out these pieces of our history before they're gone.
Wow. This is a 19th century pipe organ. My name is Ian Ference, and I'm a guerrilla preservationist. I'm absolutely racing against the clock every day in terms of trying to get to and document these buildings. In the 10 years I've been doing this, I've shot probably 200 to 300 buildings. In that time period, probably about 100 of those buildings have been destroyed.
Definitely a cool detail.
I've gotten to see things and do things and explore things and really walk through history that nobody gets to see.
When this place was founded in the mid-1800s, it was a resort-style sanctuary where people on the fringes of society could recuperate and thrive.
People were supposed to be healed and mentally recover through the architecture.
In 1905, there was a paradigm shift when Joseph S. Desjardins took over as superintendent at the hospital. I wouldn't imagine it would have been pleasant to be a patient here under Joseph S. Desjardins' tenure. His medical practices and inventions were frightening.
Desjardins sought not only to cure mental illness, but to prevent it from happening in the first place.
That's it. Beautiful.
Desjardins felt that the best way to root out insanity was to root out the genes that caused it. Due to this, he implemented a policy of involuntary sterilization, primarily of women, at the state hospital.
So what would happen was people would go out, the police, and they would round up members of a family, and they'd take them to places like this, which were basically sterilization mills.
These patients weren't given a choice.
The patient was told that they were going in for a routine surgery, and while they were under the anesthesia, they were simply snipped in such a way that they could no longer reproduce. After Desjardins' ideas on eugenics were widely accepted by the scientific community here, they started to gain favor in Germany in the 1930s. particularly among Nazi scientists who were looking at racial purification.
You have Joseph Desjardins looking on, and what does he say? He says, the Germans are beating us at our own game.
He was so convinced that America needed to sterilize more of its population.
In 1945, after the Second World War, Desjardins fell widely out of favor, as did the theories of eugenics.
But Desjardins did not waver in his quest to eliminate mental illness from American society. By 1952, Western State was overcrowded with patients, and the unhappy staff was on the brink of revolt. Desjardins was convinced he could get the hospital back on track and cure mental illness through a range of aggressive treatments. He invites renowned lobotomist Walter Freeman to Western State to demonstrate his newly developed transorbital lobotomy.
His idea was to go through the tear duct of the eye and sever parts of the frontal lobe that way.
Right by the eye, in that spot.
He would insert an object that looked very similar to an ice pick into their eye socket and through their skull.
It's a very easy procedure.
There would be a little resistance, so we'd have to use a hammer. He'd tap it through till it made contact with your brain. Then he'd perform a little procedure where he'd spin it around, basically, and sever the connections between your frontal lobes.
And so I'm very gently manipulating it.
Freeman started diagnosing almost anybody as in need of a lobotomy. He used it as a cure for everything from minor depression to psychotic disorders, and really overstepped his bounds. Eventually, he was forbidden from practicing the procedure after a patient died on his table.
Even in death, there was little regard for the patient's humanity.
The graveyard at Western State Hospital consists primarily of very simple, small headstones with numbers on them. And in most cases, the documents on which the number and the corresponding name were correlated have been lost.
Its reputation marred by decades of pseudoscience and cruel medical experiments, Western State was abandoned in the early 1970s. The history of this asylum is a cautionary tale. If this place is destroyed, the stories of what happened here could be lost. The three of us are on a mission to keep that from happening.
But I feel like it's important to speak for these people who've long been forgotten. It's not just about the burial grounds and the unmarked graves. It's not just about these abandoned buildings. It's about human lives and their stories.